Okay. Let me know how that volume is. Welcome everyone to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be making a painting by another one of my very, very favorite artists. His name is Gerard Sekoto, and he is probably among the most important South African artists of all time, if not the most, or top 2 or 3 of all time. And I'm really excited to be painting him on this special Father's Day episode. So let's take a look at the painting we're going to be making. Here it is. So it's called The Proud Father, and I'm not exactly sure who the father is. I don't think Sekoto had any children himself, so I don't think it's a self-portrait. It could be a brother or a cousin who's celebrating the birth of their relatively new child on their knee. But I just thought, like, what a beautiful image to help celebrate Father's Day. I'm a proud father myself of a almost 2-year-old girl. We just came back from our swim class today. Didn't go so well, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Slowly we're getting better and better, and she's getting more used to the water, which is the most important thing. Anyway, so let's take a quick look at, actually, you know what? I want to let you know that this is the original image. And then I've done a tracing of the image, which you can print out. It looks just like this, and you print it out on your regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And if you want to find where that is, there's a link to a Dropbox folder in the video description below there somewhere, and you can see here's all the names of all these other artists. Alma Thomas, Jacob Lawrence, Bob Kane for Batman, Yayoi Kasuma, and then Gerard Sekoto right down here. And then you'll see 3 files. One is the original image, and then there's 2 versions of the tracing. One's a JPEG and one's a PDF, whatever's easier for you to print out. Some printers are a little bit picky, right? The other thing I want to let you know about is there's a private Facebook group just for people that are watching right now and are painting along with me, because I invite you to make today's painting along with me, or you can paint anything else. And then you can upload whatever images you're working on to the Facebook group. And then usually about once every month, 5 weeks or so, I do a feedback episode where I look at people's artwork. Oh my goodness, it's hot down here already. I look at people's artwork and give them some positive criticism to help them improve their artwork, and people are welcome to take it or leave it. But the response that I've gotten is that people find that to be among the most helpful episodes that I do here. Anyway, it's also a really great supportive community. There's over 100 people here, I think, or close to, who are really into learning how to paint. Some people have been painting for a long time, and some people are brand new to it. And what I love is how supportive everyone is within this community to encourage one another and to try to bring out the best in everyone, right? And it's every time I go on there, I just feel like, oh my goodness, what sweet, sweet people. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this whole biography. I don't think Wikipedia it's not the most in-depth description of a guy who led a fairly remarkable life. But what do I want to say about him? Obviously, he was born in South Africa, and he lived probably the first, I think, 30 years or so in South Africa, and then moved to Paris in, I think, like 1947, like right after World War II. I think did he die in Paris? Yeah, so he died in Paris. I don't even know if he ever returned to South Africa. He referred to that departure from his homeland of South Africa to France as a self-imposed exile, and for good reason, right? He was a black artist who was living in South Africa, and up until like the early 1990s was under the apartheid system, which, if you don't know anything about apartheid, was a horrible, horrible, disgraceful, shameful episode in human history, really, because it affected the whole world, where blacks and whites were segregated, and really the whites, who were the minority in South Africa, had all of the power, had all of the wealth, and all of the the military police control. And so to be black in South Africa during the time that Gerard Sekoto lived was basically living in a very, very large prison. And one of the reason, really, ultimately, I mean, there was a few reasons why he left South Africa. I'm just going to scroll down here in case somebody wants to read while I'm talking. One of the main reasons he left to go to France was because that was where, you know, the center of the art world was at the time, right? All of the great artists were living in Paris and maybe Berlin, but for the most part, like, that's where Picasso was. Picasso stayed there the entire World War II. Matisse was there. All of the Cubists and the Fauvists, all of the avant-garde modernist painters were there. So that is kind of a no-brainer. But really, you know, for an artist who lived under the apartheid system, it was like getting out of jail. And he went there, and all of a sudden, he was allowed to move around freely. He was allowed to go to restaurants that he otherwise would not have been able to go to. He could go to movies. He could go to art galleries. One of the most ridiculous, absurd things that it's, even to say it defies logic. But one of the absurd things is that he one of his I think. No, not that. Which was the painting? Let me see if I scroll down and see if I can find this. Okay, so this painting here was acquired by, I think it was the Johannesburg Art Gallery, the main municipal art gallery in Johannesburg, in, let's say, like late 1930s. And that was the first artwork that museum had brought into its collection that was created by a black artist. Prior to that, no black artists had been accepted into the art gallery. So that's a big deal, right? That's a great thing. That's showing some progress. But you know what the incredible, ridiculous irony of the whole situation was? Is that he wasn't even allowed into that museum. So they bought his artwork, put it on the wall, but he wasn't allowed in, right? So his artwork was allowed in there, but being a black artist, he wasn't actually allowed into the museum to see all the rest of the artwork. Not only that, he even applied prior to that to be a janitor to work in the museum, and he was denied that job because he was black, right? So you could see in a person's mind saying, like, this situation is absolutely ridiculous, right? So one of the great things though about his art and him as a person is this sense of perseverance despite these odds. You know, when we look at these paintings of his, there's, I think of a number, like words come to mind like resiliency, there's an intimacy, like a deep humanity to these images. There's a lot of melancholy in these faces. You know, there's a lot of shadows on the faces, which really creates, are very moody. When we see people's faces bathed in shadows, it tends to evoke lots of imagery in our imaginations, right? You know, if somebody is really well lit, it makes people look heavenly and healthy, and that they're in the light, they're on the spotlight, right? And it gives people a lot of what's the word? Agency, right? It gives people power, right? When you're in the light, right, you're being spotlit, you're being celebrated. When you're in the shadows, when you're painted in the shadows, or even when you are in the shadows and you're partly in the darkness, right, like even just like these images here, it creates like a mystery. It evokes, like there's some kind of a tension there, because you're like, oh, why is someone either hiding from something in the shadows, right? Or is there not enough light? Is there a problem with the light? You know, or is there is there it's very theatrical, really. And when I think of like that type of a lighting, it goes all the way back to Caravaggio in the Renaissance. And Caravaggio used this technique called chiaroscuro, which is like a strong contrast between light and dark. We see that same sort of thing in film noir films from the 1940s and 50s. And it's a very evocative type of lighting, right? Right? Can you imagine the difference between, like right now, like there's a lot of light shining on me right now, but if we were doing this with all the lights turned off, right, it starts to look like, you know, maybe we're around a campfire and I'm speaking quietly in whispers because I don't want other people or other things to hear, right? So I think there's a lot of his portraits have that particular quality where there's this strong, moody lighting. And so I think of like resiliency, I think of like intimacy, I think of like people trying to summon this inner power to just go on about everyday life despite this kind of omnipresent evil system that is influencing everything around you, right? Anyway, we'll get into more of his story as we go along here, but I just want to kind of, I think it's important to kind of start the episode by understanding the conditions under which this artist, and really any of the other artists we've covered in the past, have created their artwork under. Okay, so here's our outline, and I'm just going to play a video, because I've actually already transferred. So let me open that. What am I doing here? Oh, here we are. So I've already transferred this image onto a canvas, right? So remember I said you can download this from the Dropbox, print it out, and then we're going to transfer it onto the canvas. And I'm just going to show you really quickly how that process works. And Okay, so let's just switch to this angle and I'll just talk over top of it. So the first thing I do when I get one of these canvases, you can get them from the dollar store or from your art supply store, is I put a little bit of white gesso onto the canvas, and then you just saw me sanding it off after it dried, so that if you put that extra little bit of effort in, you can get a smoother surface upon which to paint, and it just makes your life easier when you're making your paintings, to have a smoother texture. Now, there's certainly lots of other people who prefer having a really rough textured canvas. I'm not one of them, but if you want that, then certainly you can skip that process. Now, here you see the carbon paper that I use. Right, you can get it from any dollar store, and you can see I've used that carbon paper many times. So you can use it over and over and over, probably 10-15 times before all of the carbon on there has been used. You can use graphite paper, same sort of thing. If you can't get it at an art supply store, which they should have it, there's a link to buy it from Amazon in the description below. You can also often get it from a fabric store, because people often trace their fabrics or the patterns onto fabric using charcoal or graphite paper. Okay, so I'm just going to speed through this because this is pretty self-explanatory, and then you can see I just peel it off. It's a good idea just to take an extra little second to make sure you've got all of the lines before you peel the actual final image off of the canvas. Okay, and there we go. Oops, let's oops. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory. So the next thing I want to do with this painting is I'm gonna cover it with some with a warm yellow ground, and that's something I do pretty much all the time. There have been a few notable exceptions over the past 8 months since I've been teaching this class, but even then, as time goes on, I start to think, you know what, especially for a beginner's class, you could pretty much use this same approach to any painting that you make, 99% of the time. Okay, so I'm just going to take some warm yellow. Right, this is my Azo Yellow Deep, and if you're wondering, like, what is a warm yellow or a cool yellow or a cool red or a cool blue, etc., there's a link below to my entire 45 episode long Intro to Painting course. It's all free. It's available on YouTube for you to watch at your convenience. But the first few episodes, we mix a color wheel. You can see that right up there. Right, we mix the color wheel, and then I talk all about how to, what warm and cool colors are. Right, so we're going to take this warm yellow, and you can see right out of the tube, and I'm going to put some water on there. Got a little bit on the canvas. Probably a good idea to do this without the painting underneath. That's a lot of water, Michael. I don't think I need all of that. Okay, that's better. I mean, if you have too much water or too little water, it's not going to make a huge difference. The only reason really why I put some water in here is really because it just speeds up the drying process. If you're putting, you know, a lot of paint onto the canvas all at once, then it's going to take longer to dry. Now, it is a pretty humid day and hot day here in Vancouver where I am, so any paint is going to dry very quickly, which can be a great thing. It can also be really annoying. It can make life a little bit difficult. Just a few weeks ago, I was trying to do a painting with a lot of blending in it, and it just ended up not working at all because it was just too hot and the paint was drying too quickly. And even though I was putting some, and I tried to combat that with some slow dry medium, but it just ended up making the whole painting really tacky and it wouldn't dry properly. So, you know, if you're painting in a really, really hot environment all the time, you're going to run into that problem. So there's obviously, you can have air conditioning, you can paint really early in the morning or late at night, or you can adapt your painting process so that you're doing less and less blending. Right, like painters like the Impressionists did relatively little blending. They might do some blending on the canvas. Obviously, they painted with oil paint, so they didn't really have to deal with that problem that much at all. But actually, I'm just going to go over this. There's a few kind of little clumpy streaks, so let's just clean that up. I see lots of comments in the chat there. I'll get to those in a couple seconds. Maybe while this, I'll let this dry and then I'll look at some of the comments. Just clean up my workstation. What was I doing the other day? Oh, I had spray glue. For the previous episode, I was showing how to glue fabric onto canvas, and I got a little bit of spray glue on the table. And I tried to wipe it off with some acetone, thinking that, yeah, that'll get away any kind of glue on the table. And look how it just took the grid off of my table. I thought that was actually kind of funny. So, anyway, let's move this back here and just take a quick look at the chat. So there's Paula there, says Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Joshua says, hello Markowsky, sorry I can't paint today because I'm with my father and I painted all night for the Waterloo Bridge, old and new. Oh, interesting. And says the volume's alright. And there's Cigar says, I was struggling with mixing colors and I found the way you teach the best. Keep up the good work. Love from Nepal. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. I hope I got your name right. Cigar, is that right? Cigar Dungel? I really appreciate the support all the way on the other side of the planet. That's so cool. That makes me super, super excited. And there's Heidi says, Happy Father's Day, Michael, and to all the fathers. Got to do this later. I need to do the father stuff now. Yeah. I didn't know if there was going to be that many people joining me today because it's a bit of a holiday for a lot of people, but I thought, I really enjoy painting, and since it's my day, this is how I'm going to celebrate. Our daughter is taking a nap upstairs right now. I'm not being a neglectful father. Okay, so, look at that. That's pretty much almost dry. But just to speed the process up, I'm going to give it a little bit of a blow dry. Coolness. I love this stage of the painting. I love when we've got the basics on here. We've got this yellow ground. We've got our pencils on there. It just feels so exciting. I'm like, ah. Because sometimes when the painting is done, it's almost hard to even, like, sometimes I think to myself, wow, at one point there was just a white canvas. And then now there's all this beautiful color on it. I know it sounds absurd, but it gets me so excited. Okay, I'm just going to turn this light down. It's super, super bright. Okay. Whew. Okay, and I'm just going to put this cold pack on my camera up here. Okay. So, let's get some colors on our palette. So, we're going to put some warm yellow here. We'll probably use a lot of warm yellow in today's painting. Some cool yellow. Again, especially in a hot day like this, I strongly recommend not putting too much paint on your canvas or on your palette, because it's going to dry pretty quickly. And the faster the paint dries, generally, the less pleasant of an experience I think it is to paint with. Oh, come on. I know there's more in here. Ah, okay. Let's get a different tube. Some cool red. What am I missing? Cool blue. That's funny. I guess my cool blue... Did I run out of blue last time? Okay. So we've got all the colors in here. Let's just take a look at the painting itself. Okay, so that's the original painting that we're going to do. So the first step that we want to do is probably, at least the way that I like to work, is I usually like to work from the background to the foreground, and then do a little bit more work in the background, and then finish on the foreground. Now sometimes there might be an extra few back and forths, but for the most part, that's usually what I end up doing. Because that way, the final marks on the foreground can usually overlap anything in the background, and it helps not only tidy things up, but it also makes, if we overlap a shape, right, then the shape that's on the top looks closest to us, right? Like, so for instance, if we painted this background and it overlapped onto his jacket or onto his face, there would be a weird sense of like, oh, is he coming out of the wall, or why is the wall in front of his face, right? So that's why, you know, painting a little bit on the foreground imagery at the very end can help clear up any of that confusion for the viewer. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's move this here. Let's think about what colors we can put in the background. Now this yellow that we put in there is, you know, not too bad for a start. Usually what I like to do is put cool colors in the background and then warm colors in the foreground, right? Because cool colors tend to go backwards, they tend to recede, and warm colors tend to come forward. Now, that law, you know, is not a law, or that process that I use isn't, you know, it's a rule that can be broken. And in this case, it looks like this painting is almost entirely warm colors. Like, when I look at really everything in this painting, I don't really see that. I don't really see a cool yellow, I don't really see a cool blue, I don't really see a cool red. So it looks like he was painting with a pretty limited palette. So now that I see that, I may be less inclined to actually use some of the cool colors on my palette. So the question in my mind is, do we paint this painting exactly the way that Gerard Sekoto painted his painting, and really only use a very limited palette, or do we paint it in the way that we've been painting over the course of the past 86 episodes, right? And there have been times where I've broken from my sort of process or system to embrace other artists' processes. One of the major reasons, actually, that Sekoto may have made this painting with such a limited palette is really for the first 10 years of his career, he was painting with the most basic available paints that he could buy. You know, again, the apartheid system was really intense, and there wasn't, not only, even if you could afford certain things like artist materials, it didn't mean that the white people who were in power would sell them to you, right? That's how sick and perverse and insane that whole system was, right? So he would often paint on like cardboard that he found, on like butcher paper, you know, like that brown roll of paper, you know, just any type of material that was available, and any type of like cheap poster paint, like tempera paint, all that kind of stuff that might have been given to children in school if they, right? So you know what, I think maybe I will just try to use a really limited palette today. We'll see. Well, I think, so I know that this is a lot, me just thinking out loud, but I do think it is the colors that we choose to paint with, you know, can really alter the painting quite dramatically, right? If I was to start painting with a lot more of the cool colors, I think we might have more depth in the painting, but it might not have the same, it'll look a little bit different. And I know some people are saying, Michael, please don't try to do 2 paintings again today, because I never ever finish my 2 paintings when I start them. But it is so, I really, okay, I won't, but it would be a really neat exercise to do one with the full palette and then one with just our warm colors. Anyway, so let's use our warm palette to do most of this painting today. So I think we're going to need a bit of white as well to get some of these tinted colors in here. Okay. So let's move this to the middle. So I'm going to take this warm yellow. I'm going to take a little bit of red. That was a little bit too much, so now I'm going to have to use a bit more. I want to get just a bit more of an orangey quality. Take a bit of white. Okay. So let's take this. Now, let's kind of paint this in the background up here. Now, often when I'm painting things in the background, I often do a second layer to get a really solid color. But when we look at his background here, and again, notice how I'm not afraid to paint over my lines a little bit. So it's a little bit on the darker side from his original painting. It actually looks maybe a little bit closer to what we have down here. So you know what? I'm gonna carry that forward, and I'm thinking I'm gonna lighten up that top side here. And sometimes you don't know that until you actually start painting it. So you know what? Let's get a little bit more white in there. Let's get a little bit more. That's too peachy. So we'll just get a little bit more yellow. Because the bottom part is a little bit more of a peachy orange, and to get that peachy color, it's like it's a little bit more of an orangey, reddish orange with white in it. Okay, so let's try this up here. There's lots of different ways that we can get this shadow, one of which is we could just add darker paint and tone down this orange. But we could also do a glaze in that area. We could just paint other colors over top of it. I tend to kind of just paint the whole color in. Rather than do too much blending on the surface, unless it's a specific painting that needs it. But okay, and now you know what, that still kind of looks a little bit more on the orange side. I bet you though, if I lighten that top half up, it's going to change. So we'll just have a little bit of a faith on that for a second. So I think what I'm going to do next is let's do the bottom down here. I'm going to add a heap load more white into this color. And this time I'm not going to mix the paint very much. Like, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to start painting it. And if the color changes as I'm painting it, I'm going to let that happen. Right, because you can kind of see in his painting there is that a bit of this effect. I'm not sure if it shows up on camera that well, but you see how I just let some of the paint that's kind of on the brush already come out. And it's actually it takes some quite a lot of self-control to not blend all of the paint in, right? If you see an area where there's kind of a little bit of a blob of paint of one color or another. Okay. So oh yeah, there's more here. It's always these places that I sometimes forget. I'm like, oh, I gotta go back and get that. Okay. So that's pretty good for my first layer. As I said, I'm probably going to go back, and I can already see places where I'm going to add more white on the top and probably do a little bit of work down here. But for our foundational layer in the background, I think that's pretty good. In fact, maybe while I'm right here, I'm just going to take this same color that I put down on the ground. I know it's not the exact same color. I'm just going to put this in the frame up there. I'm going to paint that, I think, white later on, but I think for right now it's okay. Okay. So, let's now wash our brush. And then it's really important to have a sip of tea. Even on a hot day, tea always has the answer. So let's move on to the foreground now, right? We've got our background. So the next colors in here, what should we do? I think let's do the blue. So we're going to take our warm blue. So this is this ultramarine blue. Get some of that on my palette here, just spread it out a bit. And then there's going to be a lot of white in here. I'm going to lighten it up. My first pass is going to be a little bit on the lighter side. I can always darken it. It's always easier to darken a color. Even after that color's been applied, it's easier to darken it than it is to lighten it. So I'm going to take this and let's just paint it. Everywhere on here. Again, if I go a little bit over the background, that's okay too. And often when I'm doing, because this is still the first part of the painting, and if I want, I can always change things, and I always use like a larger brush when I'm doing these initial parts of the painting. Like, notice how I'm not worrying too much about mixing the colors and getting all that right and getting the right color for each place. I know there are other people here on YouTube that do that, but this is the way that I was taught when I went to art school. And I had some really, really great instructors, teachers, and I had the opportunity to go to some really great art schools. I'm just going to take this same color. I'm just going to put it all over here. I love these like big bell-bottomy pants he's wearing. So I'm putting it on relatively thin so that I can still see some of the pencil lines that were there before. So it's going on kind of rough, right? It's almost like a bit of a dry brush technique here. Okay. Let's zoom in just a bit here. So happy with that. Maybe let's even just, I'm just going to take maybe a little bit less white in here. I'm just going to paint his shoes with the same sort of blue. It's going to be a little bit darker, obviously. Now, I don't know if this is exactly how he painted. He did take some classes. He didn't have an opportunity to take that many classes, but he did study, particularly when he went abroad. This painting would have been made, I'm trying to think, I think he went to Paris in 1946? 47. So this painting would have been made either right before he left to Paris or right after he arrived there. Okay. So that's pretty good too. We're on a good roll right now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not even going to bother washing my brush because I'm going to make a brown. And the brown I'm going to make is going to be a warm red brown, right, to get his jacket. And yeah, so actually I'm not even know if I'm going to make a brown. I'm just going to take this warm red. Let's take some of this blue and mix that together. And it's going to kind of make a brown as it is. Now, that might be a little bit dark, so I'm going to put some warm yellow in it. So this is definitely a brown. When we put all three together, we get a bit of a brown. Okay. Let's take this color. Let's zoom in here. I've been pretty zoomed out for a while, right? Again, you're noticing like I'm using this pretty big, thick brush to do a lot of this work. I generally always use a bit of a bigger brush than feels comfortable when I'm laying in color at this stage, because it forces me to not get hung up on details. Okay. Yeah, now there's some oranges and other colors in there that I'm going to apply subsequently later on, but for right now, also trying to do little details like this with a bigger brush is like great practice, because it really forces you to learn how to do some brush control with a larger brush. I think oftentimes people, when they think of like brush control, they think about like, can you do really tiny, fine details? And that's obviously really important to be able to do as well. But it's also, I think people underestimate how important it is to be able to use a large brush with like a level of dexterity. Right? If you can do, you know, small details with a big brush, then not only can it save you some time, but it can make your life a lot easier. Because then it makes, then if you're, once you're moved down to a smaller brush, like, wow, I got this, if I can do it with a big brush. The other thing too is if you're always using tiny little brushes, it takes you way longer, and it ends up being like a little crutch, right? You end up, and then you get really fixated on making things perfect. Whereas if you're starting larger, then you'll learn how to do it, and I think you get more confident too. These are all my big brushes. I always take, whenever I'm using my brushes after a session, I don't put them back with all of the clean brushes. I always put them to the side, and I wash them at the end of the session. I use like a special brush cleaner, and if you want to get it, there's a link down below in the video description to that brush cleaner. But if you just want to use like dish soap, hand soap, all those things are going to work just fine. But it's a really good idea just to clean your brushes at the end of a painting session, so that anything that's in there doesn't kind of get stuck and make your life the next session more difficult. Caring for your brushes, even if they're cheap brushes, is very important. Okay, so we mixed this brown, or this really dark red, which is basically a brown, because we took some warm red, warm yellow, or sorry, warm red, warm blue, and warm yellow to mix this. Right? But it was maybe 80% warm red, maybe 15% warm yellow, and 5% warm blue. All right? And that's how we got this really dark reddish brown for his jacket. Now we want to mix a skin tone, right? We want to get the brown on his face and his hands, and this is going to look way too red. I mean, that's this color, right? We don't want that color. We want something that's going to be a little bit brighter, right? So we can mix the color right in here. When we're mixing a skin tone, generally the dominant color is going to be your warm yellow. So we just mix this right into here with all the paint that's already there. And I just want to check something with my camera up here. It seems like it's way too dark. Sure how it got so. There we are, much better. That's where I want to be. Okay. So. That's weird. Okay, so you can see here's the brown that I'm going to use for his skin tone. And that was just warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. I think there was a bit of white in there as well. Maybe not too much. The more white you put in there, the more of like a Caucasian skin tone you're going to get. I'm actually just going to paint right over his hair, so that, because he's got pretty short hair. I know, and you're going to say, well, it's just black, but what's kind of nice is if we paint, let's just paint right over his eyes and everything. As long as I can see those pencil lines coming through, that's fine. And just the last thing, I just want to kind of brush, try to get rid of some of all those brush strokes. And let's go right into the baby's face here. I think this is some sort of a bonnet, bow or something, kind of thing that my wife likes putting on our daughters on our head. We've got like more of like little hat things for our daughter than anything else in this house. My wife likes to buy them, and then our daughter wears them once, and then she sells them on the Facebook Marketplace, which I've never used once in my life. My wife is like a power user of it. She's always, she just calls it the Marketplace. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Where'd you get that? Oh, the Marketplace. I'm like, where's the Marketplace? Oh, Facebook Marketplace. Oh, okay. Again, remember, we're still on our foundational layer here, what we would call like our underpainting. Right? So that's why I'm not like worrying about mixing colors and how correct I am. I always just want to get myself into the ballpark, and then I can start playing around with things. In fact, I'm just gonna, this is, I think, either a collar of a shirt or his neck. I'm gonna paint that too, and then put black paint or dark paint right over. Because this painting, you know, we could paint this entire painting without any black paint. And it's quite possible that he didn't have black paint either. Right? He might have mixed that dark color with the colors that we have. Right? So we can do exactly what he did. Okay. So yeah, I think I might try to just do this entire painting with just warm red, warm yellow, warm blue, and white. I think that would be, you know, a very limited palette, and we can show you how much we can do. We can still get hundreds of millions of colors with just those 4 tubes. His socks, I just noticed his socks are very similar to the white that's on the floor, so I'm just going to take this same paint and put it, same paint that I used for the floor, let's just put that on his socks. Just put that here, and you can see, like, sometimes I make little blobs and I go over. Just rub that away with my finger. I'm even going to take this same slightly off-white, kind of peachy color. Let's put him on the baby's clothes. And his shirt here. I'm going to just keep on going, and I'm going to put this same white now that I'm thinking about it. Well, let's just put it on the coffee mug. This is going to be a little bit darker. This is basically the brown chair. So, you know what, let's take some white, and let's just scoop out a bunch of this brown that we just made. Oops, I'm so done. I'm so used to having my camera zoomed so far out that I just realized you didn't see me painting half the things I just painted, right? Okay. So this is the same color I used for the skin tone. That same brown. I just put some more white into it. And you can see this is kind of closer to, I'd say like a Caucasian skin tone. Right, so just the more white that you put in that same color is going to change the skin color, like the ethnicity of your person. So you can paint anybody's skin tone, just modifying the levels of blue, yellow, red, and white. Assuming you're wanting to paint realistically, of course, because you could paint your figure with a radically different color scheme, right? Like you could use, like I think I may have mentioned before, Matisse's I think it's called the red stripe, or the red, I think it's, is it, or no, the green stripe, the green line. It's a painting of his wife where there's a green line right down the middle of her face, which was quite controversial. Okay, again, I know these colors are going to be darker, but I like when, if I darken this down and I see some of that color coming through a little bit. Okay, so let's zoom back out. Like now, I would say we are about 40% done this painting. Right? And for being an hour into the painting, that's pretty darn good. Because now what we're going to do, we've got all of the main parts of this painting laid into place. Now we're going to go back to the background, finish off the background, and then come back to the foreground, and then we'll be done. So in terms of let's try that again. Like in terms of complexities, this painting is relatively straightforward. It doesn't mean that it's really easy. It just means that because you can have a very, very straightforward painting that is really difficult and really time-consuming. But like for instance, some of the comic book paintings that we've done are really straightforward, like the Batman, the Superman, right? They're really straightforward, but they're complicated in the sense that there's all of those fine outlines in there, which can take quite a while and be a little bit tricky and difficult. Oh, I see Stephen is there. He says, Happy Father's Day, Michael. Best wishes. Great to see you again, Stephen. Can't wait until we can see you again in person. I think we're going to try to come out in the fall, hopefully, knock on wood. Depending on how the world is at that time. You never know. People are talking about a fourth wave already. Okay, so let's go back to, again, we're going to go to the background. Let's lighten some of this up. This was a little bit on the darker side. So I'm going to lighten it up, and then one of the things that you notice the way that he painted it is it's a little bit patchy, right? You notice how it's not one nice, solid color? I have full confidence that he could have done that, but he made a decision not to do that, which I think is actually a good idea. Like often, people want this like perfect blending or smooth surfaces, but if you look around, there's very few things in life that have one entire solid color. And if anything, when you see that, it can be kind of confusing visually, right? Because there's always light bouncing off all these different surfaces, right? Like if there's any, you know, somebody repaired the wall at one point and they plastered over parts of it, and you know, it can create little indentations, and if the light hits it just right, you can really see those problems in the wall, right? So as we paint that, we're just going to be kind of mindful of trying to simulate a little bit of what he was seeing. And for this, I'm also going to go to a smaller brush. So the last time, so often when I'm painting especially the background, the first kind of pass, like this is the brush that I use to do all of pretty much this whole painting so far. Now as I go over top of it, I'm going to go down. I don't think I do have kind of one in between. Alright, that's about a little over half the size, or a little less than half the size, but that's going to also, now I'm starting to focus in, right? So it's also like kind of telling myself, the first time just slopping color all over there, slap it all over, and then the next one, it's like now we're starting to dial in and get a little, try to get closer to what we had. Okay, so this was our warm yellow. Let's just take some over here. I might put some white in it this time. I'm trying to remember. Last time we used a tiny bit of red, so let's get as much of that off. Just mix a bit in here. That just is going to make it a tiny bit more on the orangey side of things. Okay. So as I'm doing this, I'm just going to sort of, I don't have to get it exactly like the way that he was doing, but I'm going to apply this paint, and I'm going to sort of go all over. It's a little bit brighter back there. Now obviously the top of his painting ends right there, so because I've just had to extend it because that's the edge of my 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I'm just gonna add a little bit more white. Right, so this next one is going to have a little bit more white. So I'm looking around like, what are the areas that are the most kind of tinted? It's got that there. See, now this painting already, just that little bit, it makes the painting look more complex, right? It doesn't look like we just have this big, boring, flat color there. And there's some paintings that have flat color and it looks really, really nice. But already it starts to look like there's other things happening in this picture. Now, how about let's go a little bit the other way. Let's take a little bit more of this regular yellow. Just dashes here and there. And then we've got some of this left over. Let's see, we'll put this. Need to darken that. So let's go into this brown that we had. This is the skin tone. Just look around to think like, okay, is there anywhere else that I can put this color? Okay, that's cool. So I'm happy with that. Now, oh, there's. I'll come back when I do the white. We'll do that little painting on the wall. So down here. I feel like we need. I like this kind of peachy quality. So let's get a bit more of that. Ooh, there's a lot of red I just put in there. Let's take this kind of peachy red, or peachy color, I guess is just peachy, right? And I'm going to paint this back here. I might glaze over the blue some of this stuff. As it comes back out this other side, so you get a little bit of white into it. And again, notice I'm not too concerned if I paint over colors that are already there, right? Okay. I think that, I might take a bit of well, well, let's wait till that dries. But I'll probably orange up a little bit down there as well later. Okay. That's good. And the ground, might do some of that. Let me think. Happy with what I've got, because basically what I do is once I do a color like that, I just start looking around. Does this need to go anywhere else before I wipe my brush off? That way I don't have to be cleaning my brushes over and over and over again. And since acrylic paint dries relatively quickly and it is a hot day, you know, I don't want to mix paint and then it's come back to it after 20 minutes like, oh shoot, I should have put that, and then the time's gone, right? Okay. I think think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix a bit of a darker, just an orange here. So I'm going to take this warm red, some warm yellow. Now I've got this orange. It's not a peachy orange, it's just an orange. Painting a bit over top of some of this peachiness. Not all of it, but just modifying it a little bit, which I think is going to look really nice later on. Cool. It is a little bit of a striking difference there. I can always darken some of that or lighten it. In fact, let's do a bit of that just right now. Take just a bit of my warm yellow. So this is just warm yellow right out of the tube. Okay, I feel great about that. Get a little bit more of that stippling that we see in this upper part. So it's just warm yellow going back over some of these areas. This brush is pretty dry when I'm doing that too. Okay, so I'm very happy with the background so far, this top part. Now let's move down to this last third of the painting on the bottom. So what I see down there is a little bit of like a gray that he's mixing into some of the colors. So let's make a gray. So I'm going to take my warm blue, take our warm red, and our warm yellow. So we got all these colors together. We mix them together. This is mostly blue. There's a lot of blue. But blue is such a dominant color that it makes it go this really dark brown, right? So you can see we've made many different browns just by modifying the amount of the proportions of yellow, red, and blue, right? So we made a very, very light one for the skin tone, right? So yeah. So this color I have on my brush right now has the same colors that are in this and in this, right? Just different proportions. This one has a lot more blue in it. That's why it looks way darker than anything else. Now, I'm going to use this same color for, let's say, his hair. I'm going to use it for some of the darker areas for the chair and all that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely going to do that. If I want to, and I might even make it a little bit darker. I'll show you how to do that. I might cheat just a little bit using some of the cool colors. But let's modify this for right now, kind of turn it into a bit of a gray. So if I put some white in there, now I can see the color for what it really is. And it looks a little bit more on the purpley side of things. So let's put a bit more yellow in there. Because it's purpley because that means there's a lot of blue and red in there. And if I start adding more white to it, it starts, it's going to go lighter obviously, but sort of yellow and white. And it's going to go a little bit more towards gray. Now I can't quite get a really, really nice gray unless I cheat a little bit. And let's add, I'll add a little bit of blue, a cool blue. Let's add just a little bit of cool red. Again, I don't know if he had these on his palette, but now we've got a much closer to a proper gray. It's still on the little bit of the purpley side of things. But if we add even more white here, there we go. There's a nice gray. And we can see we barely used any of these other colors. So this gray, I don't know if we're going to put any of it on just like this, but we're going to use it to add to other colors, including the floor. So I'm just going to now take a lot more white. In fact, I'm just going to take some of the paint off of this brush. So that's what I do. Take a bunch of the paint off. I can add more white to it. Okay, so let's take a look. Where should we put this? Why don't we start down by the foot down here? I know this color's not exactly what he's got there. We can always, I'm going to paint other colors on top of it. This is kind of a nice transition color for the shadow here. It's going to give that shadow a nice little life, even if we put an orange back over top of it. So yeah, it's a little bit more on the purpley side of things, but I love color. I just love color, but I also really like seeing color in the shadows, as opposed to just, I think some people just could be compelled to throw gray, like black and white gray right here, as opposed to mixing it with the colors we have. Okay. Let's carry on here. It's interesting, he's got some strange shadows going in different directions. So we've got some shadows going this way and this way, which suggests there might be another light somewhere. Which is not unusual, you know, if you're at a restaurant or sometimes they have light coming from all sorts of different directions, right? Okay. So now I'm going to take this same color. Let's put this on the table. Oh, you know what? I didn't even notice there was that white piece of paper there. Now I'm going to go to a much smaller brush. Get a darker blue out momentarily. Okay. So I'm going to take this same color, add a little bit more white to it, and let's take a bit of the warm blue also. So here I'm modifying that. Now let's come here and add paint over these jeans a bit here. Still going to try this with a bit of my larger brush here. Actually, I'm going to move to go to a smaller one to get a little bit more of these highlights. like, let's say these socks on one side, they're going to get pretty close to this color on the darker side, right? Okay. That's great. It's like slowly zeroing in here, getting closer and closer to the real thing. Let's zoom back out. Another sip of tea. Okay. Let's make a darker blue, and then we'll paint that darker blue in some of these darker areas here. So let's take our warm blue, and let's take a bit of this dark color that we made, right? Mix that together. Maybe let's start okay. So I'm going to paint that in. I'm just going to take a clean brush and just soften that edge a little bit. The more I go over it, the darker it gets. color right down. And even just a little bit on the top of the table here. Okay. Maybe while we're right here, I'm just going to take some of this paint and go, under the sleeves. So this dark area here, this jacket. You can see kind of how nicely it combines with, oops, sorry. Painting right in here. You can see how nicely it combines with the red brown that we put here. It kind of goes a little bit purple in that shadow, which I love. Just going to take the opportunity to paint in a few fingers. Let's just, again, I'm using my other brush as like my palette almost. Just, I can hold it right over the canvas. Okay, I'm not going to do too much more in that area because I'm going to focus in on these pants. Can you see how, like, I might take some dark color and go darker than this yet. But I want to save that in my, keep it in my back pocket until the very, very end. I always think like black when it comes to a painter should be like your nuclear option. It should be the thing you go to as not like, kind of like a last resort, only if you absolutely need it. And then when you do break it out, it is like boom, it'll blow everything else away because it's so intense, so dark, so strong. The other thing black does as a color in painting is it usually resides right on the surface of the painting. It's so often you want to reserve it for just the things that are in the foreground. So you want to be kind of careful about putting too many or putting any black lines in the background unless you're drawing like a comic book or something. See how he just left a tiny little bit of, like, there will probably even darken that as well, but just, it's helpful to notice that he's using just a little bit of a line here, right here, so that we can see that this is a thigh over top of this thigh. Right? Just, it's little clues like that artists leave us so that we can understand what's going on in a picture. Let's go down. So this color we're nearing the end of its usefulness. I'm just going to put a few, like I'm looking like what else is this dark? There's not a lot that's that dark. As I spread this paint out a little bit, it gets a little bit more transparent and less intense, less dark. Okay. I wonder, can we use this for the shoes? Where are we? There we go. Okay. I think we can do it for the shoes, a little bit on the shoes anyway. So this is my dark brown, which is basically just warm yellow, warm red, warm blue, and I did add just a tiny bit of, actually, you know what, no, this was just, like, I guess primarily dark blue with red and yellow. I didn't add anything else in here. And then now I'm just adding more warm blue. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I like where we are right now. I'm going to take this same darker color. Let's zoom out. Sorry, zoom out a bit. There we go. And I'm going to take a bit of glazing fluid. Sometimes the tip there just dries. There we go. So I'm going to take this same color, right? So this is my darker color, warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. And I'm just mixing more warm blue in here. And then I'm just going to take some glazing fluid. Because this is going to thin it out, make it a little bit more transparent. And then now, I can take it and go into some areas and just darken things down a bit. Doesn't that, like, I just love the way that that kind of stuff looks. I think it's kind of like magic. A little bit of glazing. You know, some of this needs to be lightened up again. That's okay. We're not done completely. But just darkening, getting all these mid values in here. The other great thing about glazing is we can just keep on going over areas to darken them as many times as we need to. Right, so this is the exact same color I used for the dark area. I just put a bit of glazing fluid in there, and it sort of diluted that darker color, and I can spread it all over the place without trying to mix, get the right exact amount of white or whatever in there. I can just put a bit of that on there, and I can also use it elsewhere to darken other parts of the painting. I could use the same thing on his jacket if I want. Right, and I can keep on going into the darker areas and darkening that a fraction. So glazing is really the secret weapon for artists to help fine-tune a painting, but also for more timid painters too. I say that all the time. If you're a little bit more on like you're a beginner and you're afraid of going too dark on an area or too light, put a little glazing fluid in there, and it's going to give you a little bit more leeway. Okay, zoom out just a fraction, and I'm going to use some of this same stuff, glazing fluid, and just get these other shadows. I am tempted to do another one with this leg, because it is odd that there's that shadow there, but I don't know, I have to think about it. It's also interesting to notice you can see where he made a change here. He originally had this leg longer, and he painted it out. Okay. Glaze a little bit on the table. I have to remind myself to get that piece of white paper in there at some point. Okay, so there's this blue on the wall there. We'll darken that again later. But let's just actually, maybe while I'm right here, I'm going to continue glazing with this darker color on the floor. be a little bit too dark, but it doesn't bother me. And then I'm going to come up here. And I want to get a bit of this shadow here. I might have gone a little bit dark there, but I think you get the point. Just getting that mug. Okay, so, oops, let's zoom back out. Just see where we're at. So I can keep on glazing. I think I'll do a little bit more of that as we go, after we get more of the figure painted in here. This feels like I'm very happy with what we have so far, considering we've been painting for a couple of hours, and so we had a really nice foundational painting, underpainting, and now we're kind of putting in the value to really make it pop. So what should we do next? I think what we'll do is let's do the face on both, or the faces. Yeah, and I think as we do that, then we can also start glazing on his jacket, putting some highlights and some shadows, and then we'll have a nice darker glaze that we can continue to darken a few things on here. Like if we put like a dark red glaze in some of these darker areas on the jeans, it's going to go, that'll be like a nice dark black. It'll darken those, because the combination of that dark blue with the dark red is going to make a really dark brown, right? It's going to be pretty much as close as you can get to a black without actually using black. And that's one of the challenges that I'm sort of set forth for myself today, is to try to do this painting with just the colors that he had. I see Dolores says, Happy Father's Day to you, Michael, and all the dads out there. Thank you, Dolores. Okay. So, let's dive right on into the face here. And let's think about, I think this was, we made what was our flesh tone? I think, actually let's zoom back out. We'll make another flesh tone since a lot of this is dried already. I need a bit more, just splash some water on the canvas here. I need a bit more yellow. Where's my, there it is, more yellow. And I need a bit more warm red. It's one of the things I'm like, I wish I made this decision to just use warm colors before I put all my cool colors on the palette, but you know, it is what it is. Okay. So where should we do this? Actually, I got some. Why don't we just do this right here? Alrighty, there we are. So I just took some warm red and warm blue and mix it together. So we get a bit of warm yellow in here. We've got our brown. Now this is a darker brown, and so let's take a look at the image and see if there's like a dark brown where we can apply this on the figure. I suspect we're going to have to darken or add a little bit of white as well, or maybe even gray. So with my dark brown, I'm looking around. You know, there's not a lot of places. I mean, we can. Should I start painting on the? I think. You know what? I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna quickly outline parts of the face here. So I'm taking my darkest color that I have, and I'm just going to go over, say, eyebrows. Let's get his hair in here. See how, like, this is a really super dark brown. This is not the one I just mixed. This is one we mixed earlier that I used for when I was trying to mix a gray. And then I used it to modify the blue. So it's got a bit of a purpley quality here too. I think if I do end up using any black, which I'm still weighing that decision right now. Okay. So now let's do this side of the nose here. Debating right now is, should I put in my at what point should I put in the white of the eyes? Okay, the other thing I'm looking at, these lips here. He's got mustache, I think, right there. This is a top lip, and the bottom lip is right here, right over the kid's face, head. So what I'm going to do, I just wiped the paint off my brush. I didn't clean the brush entirely because I don't mind having a little bit of color on there. I don't really want a pure white for the eyes. In fact, I'm just going to get a bit of gray on there. pure white of your eyes, just it makes them look a little bit unnatural. Just gonna paint them right out like I'm on Digliani or something, right? Maybe while I got this white on my brush, I'm just gonna go over some aspects of this little baby here. So this is a bit of a, it's not a pure white. This has got a bit of a gray quality to it. Which I like, because then I can always go brighter, right? Okay, and as that dries, just gonna do a quick second coat here. Just looking for some highlights, just kind of generally throwing them in here. But I want to be careful about going too far, because I also want to have those, this is just pretty light and dark, right? Or pretty, those are like the highlights that blow everything out. Okay, so let's go back. I got this dark brown. Over top of some of these things I painted before, and it'll darken those. Good here. Let's keep on going underneath this nose. I see what he did. Okay, so I'll have to go back and fix that. Just noticing the little points there on the lips. Okay. So I can even see like areas where he's glazed with a dark, with that blue, basically the same blue that we put down here. He's put that on the face to darken that down. So really what I'm just focusing on is just getting the main shapes on the face in. See what I just did here? Just this little, these two little peaks. That's the top lip, right? Let's go into the child's face here. I love this look on this child's face. It's kind of like, what? Piggy nose. Okay. Yeah, we'll glaze this. Let's outline. So now I'm going to do some glazing with the, actually let me see, I just want to touch up before I start glazing with the red. What just happened? Uh-oh, okay, 1 second. Camera comes back online. There we go. Somebody just had that camera. A lot of heat in this room right now. So technology. But it's good. All of this stuff, it's helpful for me to remember. I mean, it's funny, every time, I'm so grateful for all the donations that everyone has been providing. So it's allowed me to get better lights, better camera equipment, better lenses, better everything. I've built all these shelves and all this stuff, with all of your generosity. So I really appreciate that. It's just, and so hopefully these videos are getting better and better and better each time. Which is one of those things, is as the quality goes up, the more things there are for me to remember to do in order to make things function. Okay, where were we here? Oh yeah, I was gonna do the jacket and just a little bit of touching up on the jacket before I start glazing here. So let's just wash a few brushes. Just gonna clean up a little bit, because basically we're on our final. We're on the home stretch here, because now we're gonna finish the jacket, and then we're gonna have a dark glaze that we can start putting everywhere, including taking the same brownish, reddish glaze and put that on the jacket, and the pants, on the floor, on the chair, etc. Right? So, this dark red. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my warm red. Just try to see if I can suck up any blue. Just take a bit, there's the warm blue. So I just took some warm blue and added it to this color. And I'm just adding a little bit more red in there. So again, all warm colors today for this painting. Nice color. What's interesting about this painting is it's really very, as I said, it's very straightforward, but I love, like, as an artist, when you see people who make a lot out of very little, that's so exciting. It's like a chef who can make a great dinner with just the things that you got left over in your fridge. Like, what's that British television guy? I was gonna say he's young, but he's probably the same age as me. What's his name? He had a whole show where he just went around to knocked on people's doors and asked if he'd come in and make dinner with the leftovers in there, what he could find in their fridge, etc. Is it Jamie something, I think. But I thought that's so smart, and that's a lot like, as an artist, what I admire about other artists who can just use the most basic materials possible and really creates such emotion from their imagery. Okay. So that's a really nice dark red in the jacket. We're going to significantly darken some of the areas in here. In fact, let's go back here. Let's zoom out. And let's make another dark brown again. Right, so we can just do this in the same place here. We'll take our warm blue, warm red, and let's mix that together to start. You can already see we've got a pretty dark color. Let's take a bit of the warm yellow, so that's going to keep it from going too purpley. So we get that nice dark purple, or dark brown, I mean. Because the blue and the red together make a purple, but they're also almost opposite each other on the color wheel. So they're cutting through that neutral core. That means it's going to go. It's not a nice bright purple that we would get if we mixed the cool red and the warm blue together, right? Okay, so we got this nice dark color. Now if we just add more blue to it, actually no, we want to add red to it, right? So because we want this to be, yeah, so let's just take the same color and mix some red into it, and this is going to be a nice color we can use. Oops, sorry, you can't see. Mixing it here, and we'll put this inside the shadows. And we'll probably also take some blue and do the same thing, a dark version of that, but I'm going to blow dry this because it's still wet. So, in fact, I'm going to make it a bit darker with just a little bit more of the blue in there. Let's put some glazing fluid on there, and just going to wipe that excess off. And then I wipe my brush off. I don't clean it. I don't need to clean it. That way, when I mix into the... Oh, that was a good catch. That's my... Sorry, I got distracted because my... Actually, you know what? Before I even glaze, I want to paint with this dark color in the dark areas. Let's zoom in a bit. So it's okay if I got a bit of glaze on in this. Where should we go? Let's start on this sleeve here. This same dark color and put it underneath here. This is like it might be his chest or like a scarf. I'm not sure exactly what's under there. So when you're doing like kind of the folds, always think of like the folds are are pointing towards the point of tension, wherever there's the fabric is pulling against. So that's usually like an elbow or a knee. Remember I painted these areas the dark blue before, now I go over it with the dark red. And it's like I'm painting black into these areas. They go nice and dark. Okay. Same sort of thing. We're going to get even darker underneath here. Okay. Let me see. Any more? Remember, because we're going to move to the glaze shortly. I think I'm going to take this opportunity now to do a bit of the chair. So, I'm going to take this dark brown color and there's a bit outlining. Back leg will make a bit darker, kind of a because there's a shadow, like, or I mean, we're going to put more, like, there's a little bit of a halo of light on one side, but for the most part, it's going to be totally dark. And this back one, same sort of thing. You could pretty much just paint the whole thing dark if you wanted. You could put a bit of a... Like, this keeps getting wider as I paint on it. using a kind of a darker, like a blue on top of this area. I think I'm still going to do this this same brown anyway, and then we'll go back over it with a blue glaze at the end. Maybe we'll be happy with it, but if you want to get it close to what he's doing. As I paint these lines, sometimes I just get wider and then wider and wider. Just I'm gonna make that leg quite wide, but see, I probably should have painted some of that chair in earlier before I got to this stage. Like, that should have been in my, when I first went back to the foreground. I don't know why I didn't, but anyway. Let's blow dry this, and then I'm going to glaze a little bit with this dark brown onto the jeans, etc. May says, "Happy Father's Day to you, Michael. So generous of you to spend some time with us." Thank you for spending time with me, May. And everyone else who's watching, I really appreciate your time with me. Okay. Yeah, so let's do a bit. Are we ready to glaze more? And then we're still got to do stuff on the face, obviously, but we'll get there. Okay. Yeah, so I got some glaze that's already there, because I was going to do this step about 20 minutes ago, and then I got... and then I realized I was a little ahead of myself, so actually, let's just clean these brushes. mix up so here's my glaze, my glazing fluid. Just mix it in here, and you can see it has a bit of like a cool red quality. Right, that brown, a lot of like warm red in there and warm blue because they're kind of passing by where that warm red is on the color wheel. Okay, zoom back in. Think about where we're going to. Come on. The camera crooked. There. How on earth did I do that? Okay. So this glaze, it's pretty thin. Let's give it a bit more paint in that glaze. There we go. Too much paint on my brush. Let's just wipe a bit of that off. Okay. Sometimes it's a little deceptive when you're glazing as to how dark things are until it dries. So that's why it's always kind of nice just to paint. Take a little bit of patience and where else can this go? I think that's good there. So let's take this red glaze and we'll put it into the pants. See how that darkens things. You can also see the difference when I put this on the chair. I'm just now moving down the little pant leg and onto the shoe here. table. Do we need any? That's good. Okay. This mug. Take this and use this to shade the baby here. Okay. And even, you know what, I can do a bit of a glaze on. Let's zoom in a bit on the faces again. Because we're gonna, I think we're pretty much I might make that bonnet a little bit kind of a pink. It's almost a bit of that peachy color we were using way at the beginning. Okay, let's take the same color. Dark side of his face. Got a bit of paint on my hand on there. Okay. I want a bit of a warmer brown on his face here. bit more yellow. Oops. One red and yellow to make a bit of an orange. Accidentally darkened that cheek down a little bit too much, so I'm in the process of trying to bring a bit of light back into that area. I just have to let that dry. Same thing up here. It was a mistake to put that big highlight of white at that stage. So So I need a bit of a, actually I'm going to blow dry this really quickly because I've been painting a lot on there. Says, I just went to my backyard to water the plants and I noticed the rhubarb are huge. Sorry, I can't send them to British Columbia. Ah, that would be nice. Ooh, you know what I love is like rhubarb. Is it rhubarb pie? Pretty close on that face. There's, when I look at it right now on its own, it doesn't bother me, but I do want to, I think I am going to use a little hint of black in there, because I think that would be really helpful. But maybe before I go to the black, I just want to do a little bit of glaze with the blue. So let's even just take, well, I kind of wanted a bit of a muddier blue, not just a total blue. So here's just, oops. So I just took some warm blue and a bit of this dark brown that I had made earlier, or warm brown. And then, so I mix that up. You could use a different brush. I just like to use the same one. Just wipe all that excess off, and let's get some paint. Right, so, oops. So here's the color I mixed, and then I just took some glazing fluid. So it's, you know, look how transparent that color is. And then I can take this, just get a bit of super subtle blue on his face there. Sorry, here, let's look at this. You know, it is interesting that he's did the lips with that kind of blue. You know, I think our instinct would be to do that as in pink, but it gives it a bit of a more of a grayish hue, which is kind of nice. So this is very, very subtle. Just going to take and put it in a few places. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, let's break out the black. We are going to need literally like where's that black? Now the size fingernail, we barely need a third of that at the most, right? But let's just take some black. In fact, I'm not even going to take the black all by itself. I'm going to take it, I want to mix in some other color in there just so it's got a bit of life in that black. Okay. And then let's probably don't need to do the bottom eyelid. It might be a little bit intense. Let's get some in the hair. In fact, you could even do this as a glaze, just to keep yourself from getting too heavy-handed with the black. Right, so it makes quite the difference. Let's dial in on the lips. It's got this little mustache. I mean, look at them, like the difference between his and mine. Like what? He's a master, no doubt, right? Like there's parts of that it's driving me crazy, but I'm just gonna keep on plowing ahead. What else needs a bit more black in here? In fact, I don't even want to put full on black. I'm gonna take some glazing fluid, do any more black stuff with a bit of the glazing fluid just to make it a little bit more transparent so it's not so heavy-handed. We'll put little dots of white on the eyes of both the baby and on the male, the father, in a few moments here. Okay. Let's go down to the pants here one last time, and we'll just so it's going to go on pretty dark. As it dries, it'll lighten up a bit. It's probably pretty hard to see when I'm painting kind of black into an already dark area, but I'm just going to take just a random other brush that's dry just to smooth out those lines so that they're not so hard-edged. I've got a bit of my hand print on the canvas, so I'll have to clean up the bottom half a bit. Little touch-ups are always required, right? Let's see, pant leg. Just wondering, do we want, I feel like I need a bit. Here. Okay. Maybe a tiny bit of black on the table as well. And let's see, the coffee cup. I know he didn't put anything there. Oops, you couldn't see what I'm doing there, could you? So let's... Okay. So pretty close. Oh, I want to paint that. Okay, so we're just like on the last, we'll be done here in probably 10 minutes. Just in time for me to wake up our daughter from her nap. This hat needs to go kind of like a pink. So let's zoom out. I'm going to make it like a peachy pink, so I'm taking my warm red and warm yellow. Let's mix that together. Let's take some white. Okay, I think this is a little bit different than the color that he had. Zoom back in. That is driving me crazy, that lip. I just want to get a bit of white and blue, I think, in here, just to... touch that up with a bit more black here in a minute, but I feel better about that. Let's see, can I get this pink back in? Let's take a bit of white right out of the tube. I'll just put little highlights. On the eyes. Oh yeah, should I do that paper that's on the table? Is that really important? I think maybe it's... Who knows what that paper was for, so I think I gotta... This is one of my favorite things about painting, is like the fact that we can just add or delete things kind of almost at whim here. And it's really easy to do. Like, I could have just left this without the paper and it would have been no big deal. But it's just fun to think like, oh, you know what, let's put a, I don't know, a newspaper or a video game console or a cell phone. Like, there's all sorts of things we could put in there. So I'm stamping a few things around with my hands on the canvas. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so I'll probably put a little bit of shadow on there, just to, I'm going to help make that look a little bit more sensical. And while I'm here, I don't know if that makes any sense, make it more sensical, I'm taking some of the blue, the warm blue. Again, we basically been used, it's all warm colors. I cheated a tiny little bit. I just want to fix a few things. Now he's definitely got a few highlights in here. On these pants, and I think, how white do I want to go with? So this is where like the light is just hitting these folds really brightly and intensely. Let's get onto his socks here, which we kind of ignored. Camera overheated. Above me. There we go. So this leg, this knee, why is it darker again? That's so weird. So this knee, is kind of important because it's pretty much one of the closest things to us, right? Maybe arguably the foot in the front, or this this knee is definitely closer to us than almost anything except maybe that foot. So we want it to like be kind of brighter and really pop so it catches our attention. Other than that, eyes are getting a bit crossed. Just gonna glaze a little bit of blue onto this paper here. Just zoom in on that. Alright, so it looks like it's part of the scene now, even though we just added it. I don't know, what else do I want to do? I guess the floor could use a bit more attention. Everything else has been, and then that drives me a little bit nuts. I went too heavy-handed back there. So on the, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to glaze with some white, or I'm going to make this same kind of peachy floor color. So I need just a little bit more white. Where did I put my white? There we are. So let's, this floor, let's do some warm yellow, warm red, not much of it. Actually, let's mix a bit of a bigger batch. So that, okay. So here's this color, which I've used many times throughout the painting. I'm just going to wipe it off. Do you want to see if I put? Okay, let's now take some white. Just steal a bit of that color onto the white. Basically, it's the same color we have on the bottom down here. And let's look at his painting. So I'm just kind of going back over some of this shadow that I put here earlier. And also just, so I'm just trying to integrate that shadow a little bit better. And being pretty kind of, almost, I would say like, not sloppy, but haphazard with the brush strokes that I'm putting down here. I think I'll have to do some of those shadows a little bit again. Always a bit of a little bit, and then you gotta go do a bit, fix a little bit more. Oh, I gotta go fix that again. Oh. Use some glazing fluid to thin this out because that white is pretty intense. Okay, almost done. What else? That could be done. Oh, there's that picture up there. So I'm not even cleaning the brush, I just wiped excess paint off that brush because I don't think I want pure white. In fact, let's get a bit of glazing fluid. Just take a bigger brush and just soften. Okay, now I don't know if I want to do any more on those shadows or not. This up here. I mean, I could have been done 10 minutes ago, but this is all stuff that I find like a lot of fun. Like just tinkering with the painting. That picture in the background. It's a bit of so I'm just glazing very lightly. Can I walk away? I think I need to do a little something down there on that chair. You can see, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm just mixing up all the slop that's left on the canvas or the palette. Not being precious at all with it. These colors, I like them when they get dirty and kind of gross. I need a darker brown though. mix, hopefully one last final time, a dark brown. This is just the warm red and warm blue. Okay. I could have been done an hour ago, but I love fiddling with it. And I like, it's so much, like, this is my favorite part of making a painting, is where we are right there. Like, if I just look at it right now, that makes me pretty happy. I think I can see a few things I could continue on. Like, there's a bit of the jacket, it's got a little pocket there, which I didn't do. I could probably spend a little more time up here, on the baby here. Stripe on the mug. I could do a little more work on the socks and the shoes. I'd like to figure something out with that shadow there, but I think I'll just leave it. It is kind of odd, but there's no shadow on the table. But, I think for all intents and purposes, good enough for government work, as my grandfather always used to say. May says, painting looks great, Michael. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. What's today? go. Another painting. I like that a lot. That's a fun painting. I love how warm and bright and just full of life this painting is. Right? You feel like the father's really holding that baby in tight, which any new father, I'm sure, can identify with. Knows that feeling of like, oh, this thing is so precious, it could fall out of my hands at any second, and it squirms and all that kind of stuff. So, this makes me really happy, this one. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me again on this special episode. We'll be back to our regular schedule this week. On Tuesday we're going to be painting one of my favorite. This is a painting I've been wanting to paint for a while. Saturn Devouring His Sons by Francisco de Goya. One of the greatest artists of all time. Certainly, all the artists that I'm painting are, I think, in my personal opinion, the greatest artists of all time. But Goya is, in Spain, is seen like he is like the giant. Like so we're going to be tackling one of Spain's greatest artists on Tuesday, and then on Thursday we're painting an early version of the Quebec flag, the province of Quebec's flag. And then we're not doing anything next weekend. I don't think so. I've just spent the past few weeks laying out all of the next artwork, for taking us all the way into. I've got a plan for all the way up until about this time next year, but locking in all of the art. We're going to do, I don't know how many paintings, but in celebration of Tom Thompson's, of his death in July, we're going to do at least 2 paintings, maybe up to 7. We'll see how much energy I have, because he's one of my favorite artists. I'm making a graphic novel, a 150-page graphic novel on him every day. That's what I'm doing in the daytime. And then we're going to celebrate Van Gogh's birth at the end of July. We're going to do at least 2 paintings on Van Gogh. And then I'm trying to remember, I think it's in October is Picasso's birth, so we're doing a whole week of Picasso. So there'll be at least 4 Picasso paintings. So, because people have been asking, when are we going to do the Picasso? I want to do more Van Gogh. I have done 2 Van Goghs in the past. One I did, a very early version of this class 6 years ago, so you can find that video. But it's like a 8-minute long, super sped up version of the sunflower. So I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of new videos celebrating all those artists, as well as lots and lots and lots more. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sticking around and painting with me on this special Father's Day episode. If you have enjoyed things, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when future episodes are coming up, because sometimes I make a mistake like I did on Thursday and start broadcasting on the wrong episode. But if you have that notification bell, you'd see, boom, oh, he's live on this one. So there would be no confusion. You know exactly where I am. And if you want to make a donation via PayPal, there's a link below for that. Or if you want to send a e-transfer or money order or check, you can contact me directly through the Facebook page, or my email is on my website. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Happy Father's Day to all the wonderful fathers out there. And thank you so much to Sekoto for being such a great artist, for persevering despite all of the difficulties throughout your life that you faced. And it's remarkable the resiliency that some people have, like who can, no matter all the adversity that they've faced, can still make beautiful images like this, right? I'm so fortunate to have you know, everyone has struggles in their life, but not the same extent that an artist like Sekoto and all the other people that were on the other side of that, no other word to say but evil, system of apartheid, some remnants of which still exist to this day. It would be great if our daughter, one day when she wakes up, well, she's about to wake up, but when she grows up, is like, you know, when we explain to her what racism is, it's like talking about the dinosaurs. That would be so great, rather than this ongoing issue that humanity is still incapable of getting over. Right? It's just like, sometimes you just feel like we're still living in the caveman times. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening to me rant. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your evening, and no matter where you are, and we'll see you in a couple days when we tackle Goya. Good night, everybody.